I think it's a really brilliant question, yeah, because we are partners and we're in a partnership with the Cross Curve, yeah, and we used their solution for some of our customers, and definitely when the accident happened, so we really try to evaluate how it influenced on our customers, how it influenced in general to our partnerships, yeah, and we recognize that the good news, and we made, like a internal check, that it's have no influence to our specific customers. It's a good news. What actually happens? So the Cross Curve used some external messengers that should send some message from one chain, from the source chain to the destination chain. What it actually means, yeah, that the Cross Curve said that they have, and they actually have, the solution called like a consensus breach. That actually means that they use few different messengers at once to protect the specific transaction, to protect the process of lock and mint or process of transfer and liquidity across the chains. But in this specific case, to pack these two different chains, they used only XLR solution, yeah? And the problem not inside the Cross Curve, but inside the XLR messaging mechanism, yeah? And what does it mean in a practice? That when someone sends a transaction from the destination chain to the source chain, on the source chain it's checked just ID of this transaction, ID of the transaction on the destination chain, and compared just with numbers without actual checking the message from the source chain, yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of auditors and researchers didn't mention this as a vulnerability, and because of it, like the Cross Curve just used the same solution and used the methods that was allowed by external auditors, yeah. And it basically they show us how it's sometimes that we even can't fully trust to auditors and need to make some double check each time. Yeah, maybe apply some, additional AI checks or whatever. But the good news that Cross Curve still in the game, yeah, and definitely bad news about it, but it doesn't mean that it has some problems from the architecture standpoint. Yeah, and yeah, it's just, we can think about it that it's a reminder, and it should remind us how someone can abuse and attack the bridges, but it just still means that we need to make some double checks and keep in mind that such attacks can happen, and build the next cross-chain solutions and the bridges in a more secure way. Yeah. It depends. Case by case, I can say that the most common architectural problems was solved during the previous bull market, yeah, somewhere in the middle of 2020, 2021, something like this, yeah. So the most common cases already solved till now, yeah, but some cases are really edge cases. As an example, yes, the case of the Cross Curve. I think that it's a really edge case because even after all the checks, even with a good architecture and absolutely brilliant idea, it's like such weak points still exist, yeah. And definitely, I think that right now we already have a few major, the most common architectural solution that can be, we call it like a gold standard for the industry. And in general, it's a common standard, I think, yeah. So we can't say that it fully architectural problems with it, yeah. So we can say that some small bugs, yeah, small unusual cases, and what we actually call like an edge case, can happen, yeah. But our main our main aim right now is to try somehow protect and prevent such edge cases on the architectural level. Yeah, it's feasible. For example, using some hybrid solution or double check, one more additional audit, or maybe some call down for some cases. Yeah, and we in our company really try to apply more and more security checks and the protections, and sometimes even prefer to reuse existing solutions rather than create the bridges from zero, yeah, from the scratch. And in this case, definitely like it's better to apply the major standard rather than try to arrange in the wheels. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think it's the question that normally any of our customers or even anyone who decide to create their own custom chain ask us, yeah, because in the most cases it will be EVM compatible chains, yeah, sometimes layer 2 ZK rollup or optimistic rollup, doesn't matter in this case, and everyone wanted to have the part of the liquidity from the Tron chain, because the Tron chain still playing a big role in some like stablecoins transfers, yeah, someone getting payments, getting salary, or even pay some bills using stable coins on a Tron, yeah, but definitely anyone wanna to get this access to this liquidity and use this liquidity on their own custom chain. What does it mean in the practice? Yeah, because the Tron and EVM compatible chains have a different type of the addresses, different type of the smart contract, different languages for the smart contract, yeah, and that means why it's so difficult, yeah, because if we connect like EVM chain to EVM chain address on the destination chain, and the source chain will be the same, and we can use the same smart contract for the lock and mint, but even from the standpoint of the payment for the transaction fees, yeah, so in an EVM chain we have the same mechanism to estimate the gas fees, yeah, and transaction cost. In the Tron it's absolutely different with the energy concept, with payment with some TRX, etc. And it's the reason why it's so different and why it's more complex rather than just connect to different EVM compatible chains. Yeah, you know, honestly, like I think that the really LP bridges is the most like a classical approach for the many chains, and you know, it means that you as someone who wanted to pack your chain with the external one or the owner of the bridge, you don't need to provide your own liquidity, yeah, so you can ask the community to provide this liquidity, and they, in most cases, yeah, they will agree to share their liquidity with your, but in this case, you need to provide some, you know, like some profit for them, and you will concurrate with some existed like a DeFi protocols or with some other use cases for the liquidity. Yeah, it means that your bridge should have a lot of TVLs locked and a lot of transactions that walks across this bridge. Yeah, and if it's the amount of the transaction really huge and you collect a lot of fees, then you will be able to share these fees with the liquidity providers. Otherwise, in a case if you will have like a less transaction, that means that the LP provider has less reason to provide liquidity because they will collect the less of the fees. And it's the reason why they can decide to just remove liquidity from your bridge and just use on the external DeFi protocols, let's say. Yeah, and in this case, the slippage in this LP transaction with this bridging, with using LP, will be higher, and it's the reason why someone can decide, okay, I don't want to make the transaction to this chain with this bridge and prefer another option. Yeah, so you have to play with liquidity and you have to provide more and more reasons to support your bridge solution with the liquidity. definitely not from the social standpoint, right? The best part about the lock and mint approach that you don't have liquidity at all. Yeah, so in the case of the LP bridges, you need to ask someone to provide the liquidity for LPs. In this case, you even don't need to have your own liquidity, yeah, for the lock and mint. If someone wanted to use some stable coins or use your chain, they will be able to lock some number of the stable coins or whatever coin it is on the destination chain, and then means the equal number on your custom chain or in general in the destination chain, right? But what's the problem? The biggest problem about this approach that it can create the different type of the token on the destination chain. Yeah, so it's about the fragmentation of the liquidity. For example, you will have one version of the token that from the Ethereum and another from the Arbitrum, or the different type of the tokens issued by the different bridges with a lock and mint approach. So it's about the fragmentation. But it also faces some problems from the technical standpoint, because if someone will attack the messenger and send the wrong message that you have to unlock some amount of the token on the source chain or issue additional number of the token on the destination chain, then he will be able to get the additional, let's say, liquidity that do not collateralized by the actual tokens on the source chain. Yeah, so it's a big issue, and in the most cases, if someone try to attack such sort of the bridges, they combine economy attack with a technical attack, but not social. Yeah, I do agree that intent-based approach, it can be the best approach from the user experience standpoint, but if you create your own chain, yeah, it means that you have to provide like additional motivation to some bots, algorithms, or even persons to be the solver, because the solvers is a key component of the intent-based approach. For one of our customers, for many basically of our customers, we use a 1inch Fusion Plus. It's exactly intent-based approach. Yeah, but if you wanted to use the same for your own custom chains, you have to motivate someone to be this solver. Yeah, but in this case, for example, if they will see that the less and less the transaction volume on your chain and less someone who wanted to make this transfer of the bridge, so then they can just try to dictate you their expectation from the revenue standpoint, then the user experience become the worse and worse. Yeah, and this low cost can be higher and higher, and transaction speed also can be slower, and once maybe you will be only one solver or resolver who will operate with such approach. So it's I think it's the worst part about intent-based approach. If we are talking about the bridges in general, if you create your own custom chain and you wanted to connect this chain to external, let's say, ecosystem, in the most case, I'm pretty sure that you don't really want to connect your chain to one external chain. In most cases, you want to connect your one chain to many external chains, yeah? But in the case if we use here some LPs approach or approach with lock and mint, it means that you need to connect your one chain to the many chains. It's really like a cost, and it requires a lot of liquidity. So in the most cases, it's normal to just pick only one chain that will be your source chain and connect with your chain, yeah? And in this case, with your destination chain, in this case, it can be like a lock and mint approach. But this external chain can be connected with many other external chain in a different way. For example, with LPs approach or with intent-based approach, in exact names, yeah? So if you create your own L2 zk rollup shop and you wanna to get the liquidity from external ecosystem, you can use Arbitrum as a source chain to your chain. Yeah, and in this case, Arbitrum can be connected with, let it be like a Tron, yeah, in intent-based approach, and connected to the Ethereum with a LPs approach, and then these last miles will be just a lock and mint approach to your chain. Yeah, so the hybrid solution allow you to get access to any liquidity, any external liquidity on the external chains, but with one like intermediate, let's say, chain that you will use as a source to your own custom chain. You know, I think the most uncomfortable question is how much do you ready to spend to this bridge solution, yeah? And how much money do you ready to allocate for some solution, yeah? Because in case if we are talking about intent-based approach, it means that okay, like from the really beginning, you will need to provide some sponsorships or some other reason to solvers to stay as solvers, yeah, with your chain, because maybe the traffic across your chain will not be the biggest one from the day one, yeah, but then you will need really to sponsorship their solution. If you stop to do it, in the most cases they can decide to turn off their solution. Otherwise, if we are talking about like a lock and mint approach, you will need to pay some money to the existing well-known messengers to connect your chain to their networking of the messengers, yeah, and it will take a lot. I mean, you will pay some hundreds of thousands of US dollars just to be connected, and then like it's one-time payment. If we are talking about the LPs approach, you will also need to, you can basically provide your own liquidity, yeah, and it still means that you can be only one LP providers for this approach, or but this liquidity will be locked, or you will pay to someone to lock their liquidity, and it also means that you have to spend maybe some supply of your own token, or in a best case scenario, like additional sponsorship for the locked liquidity. So for me, the first and the most important question is how much do you really ready to spend on it, and how much money and tokens you will ready to allocate for such solutions.